Did President Trump actually cave to the anti-gunners for the very first time in his new administration? That's what we're going to look at today as we talk about a case that involves the ATF and the Trump administration and how the ATF is now refusing to send property back to gun owners in up to 16 states. Not only will we talk about the impact to these gun owners that are having their property essentially seized, we're going to talk about the options these gun owners have, the options they don't have, and how this could affect you in the future. Even if this doesn't affect you now, this sets a pretty dangerous precedent when it comes to 2A rights. I want to shed some light on this if you don't know about it. If you're somebody that's affected by this, maybe you're getting your property back, maybe you're not. Love to hear from you guys. Whatever your opinion might be, leave that down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So you may remember there was a lawsuit with rare breed triggers, and essentially the ATF reclassified these devices as full autos. Now, they're not full autos. If you don't know anything about them, we cannot show them here on YouTube any longer, right, without having issues, so not going to do that. But just as a visual, essentially what it does is when you go to fire a round, just like any other gun, it actually has a spring that pushes your finger forward, so then you can fire around a little bit quicker. So there's no device in the gun that means you can just hold the trigger back and now you have just infinite rounds coming out. It's literally one trigger pull, one bullet, just like every other gun. The device just has a little bit of assistance in there, so it pushes your finger forward so you can fire a little bit quicker. Now remember, in practicality, these devices are not necessarily something that a lot of people would want, right? If you're in a self-defense situation, let's just say, or you're going for precision and accuracy, which is, let's just be honest, that's the point of firearms. A lot of the times you're not going to want anything like this. A lot of people see them as kind of a novelty item, but I say they're actually more than that, especially with this ongoing litigation and actually the result of this ongoing litigation from these 16 states. So when the Second Amendment Task Force came along and Pam Bondi started talking about, hey, the Second Amendment isn't a second-class right, they actually came to an agreement with rare breed triggers that says, hey, we're going to allow you to sell these devices with the understanding that you're going to, teach people to be safe about them. You're not going to be able to sell in certain states that have bans, and you're going to protect your patents, essentially is what they came up with. So Rare Breed Triggers was able to at least win and stay in business, right? And we were all rooting for them. But after that, that's when these 16 states said, hey, no, we're going to sue the Trump administration because we don't want those devices in our states. And unfortunately, the Trump administration decided to not go forward and fight these battles on a state level. They conceded. Now, why the Trump administration conceded this, I'll talk about here in a minute. But here's what's going to happen to gun owners that sunk their hard-earned money. By the way, Rare Breed Triggers estimates that you have $2.5 million worth of their products out there that were just seized. I mean, these triggers alone are $500 each. Now, you may not know who I am. You may see these guns behind me and may say, oh, this guy, $500, nothing to him. But if you don't know who I am, just on a personal level, $500 is still a ton of money. It doesn't matter how many subscribers I get on this channel. This has been over a decade now of building up. And when I started this channel, I literally had nothing to my name. I don't say that to brag. I say that very humbly. The point I'm trying to get across is, again, no matter how big this channel gets, $500, $200, it's a lot of money. And here's the option to you. If you're in one of these states where they've essentially blocked you from getting your property back, you're going to get a letter that says, hey, from the ATF, by the way, it's going to say, hey, do you want us to send this FRT to somebody in another state where it's legal, a third party, or do you want us to keep it and then destroy it? And then, of course, people that will get the property back will get a letter stating that, hey, this is how you can have your item returned. You may think that FRTs aren't important. They're not covered under the Second Amendment. But this is a functional device to a gun. They could use this with almost any trigger device. Any trigger. They could use it with any part of a gun. They could say, hey, you have a barrel that's rated for full auto. You're not allowed to have that. Now imagine ATF coming to your door, seizing your property, holding it for God knows how long, and then eventually saying, yeah, we're not going to reimburse you for that. That's silly. We're going to keep it because we don't think going to battle with these states is actually worth it. Now, that doesn't mean that the Trump administration didn't try to send their property back to every single state they did. But think about the precedent this sets, where the federal government says, hey, we're expanding gun rights, okay? Let's think about the NFA, SBRs, any number of 2A decisions, and then states block those decisions, and the federal government says, well, yeah, we're not going to go to battle for these gun owners in these states. It's like the government coming in and seizing medical devices, reversing course, but then states block those medical devices because they just feel like it, or the feds come in and take your money. Then they find that you're actually innocent. But then a state blocks it because they say, no, you don't really deserve it. You know, that would be a freaking scandal. But this, a $500 device that works like any other trigger except it has a spring in it, they say, nope, sorry, you can't do it. You cannot bring that property back into our state. You don't even have to own FRTs, and neither do I, to understand how much of a dangerous precedent this sets in the future. Guess you can look at it and say, oh, well, it's a good thing the ATF isn't just destroying this stuff. They're at least giving people some kind of option. That's not good enough, though. There is no other device in the world. There's no other right in the United States where you could strip that right from somebody, reverse your decision on it, and then allow a state to block that decision. How many more lawsuits will this set up in the future from states and further litigation and further restricting gun rights? No due process at all here. And yes, they are treating 2A rights like a privilege, not a right. So why would the Trump administration cave to this? Well, let's look at it like this. Because this was a settlement with Rare Breed and it wasn't an actual court ruling, it's probably easier for these states to then immediately sue to try to block the return of these items. So it's still a win for gun owners, but only in those states, because you have this carve out for these anti-gun states where they agreed to not sell their products in those states. So it's going to make it easier and give these states actually a better precedent to block the re-entry of these FRTs going into these states now that they're illegal. Some states have outright banned FRTs, others depend on their already unconstitutional, like so-called assault weapons bans to enforce things like FRTs. And it's possible that some of the anti-gun people in the ATF are still over there. They still see FRTs as full autos. It's possible Trump doesn't even know about the carve-out because it was buried in these court rulings. So he kind of saw it as, hey, this is a pro-2A win. We're protecting this company. We're also protecting rights. He may not know about the carve-out. I'm not sure, right? This is all just kind of speculation. I'm not trying to defend his actions because I haven't personally talked to him. For all I know, they could just be trying to avoid any of the political fallout or going into deeper and deeper lawsuits. And plus these things are being fought on like mid-level courts too, right? You have a judge in Texas that says FRTs are totally constitutional. Then a judge in New York comes in and says, no, I disagree. So you have all like these mid-level battles going on with these things as well. So here's something that a lot of people in the media aren't talking about, but the supremacy clause of the Constitution, which says that federal law is the supreme law of the land. So any state level judges, attorney generals, they have to abide by that federal law. Of course, states have their rights too, and that has to be respected. So here's the question. If the ATF says that FRTs are no longer machine guns, maybe they should divert to their whole rulemaking process that they've used for so many years to harass gun owners and reverse that and say FRTs and these other accessories are actually protected under the Second Amendment. And then that's going to make it much harder for these states to then block these devices coming back in. And that's part of the problem because these states, they know they can't outright ban your guns, but what they do is they themselves make out their own little carve-outs. Well, this type of gun, we're not banning it. We're just making you go through a lot of extra steps in order to reload it. And if you have certain features on this gun, then you can't have a detachable magazine. And the magazines themselves we're not going to ban, but we're just going to tell you how many rounds you can put in each one. Certain devices, bump stocks, pistol braces, FRTs. They argue that these are not necessary to the function of a gun, and so that allows them on a state level to ban them. But if you think about Bruin, and I bring this up all the time because it's so important, but a lot of courts, it's seemingly a lot of courts are just ignoring, or they haven't caught up to the idea yet that you have to look at the 2A from a historical standpoint now. And historically, we don't ban certain features on guns because we think they make them more dangerous, right? That's like banning bayonets on muskets or banning certain calibers because they were more dangerous. So in short, I kind of see it as a slap in the face. I don't know if Trump's the one to blame here. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But here's what I can say for sure. Somebody at the DOJ, somebody at the ATF is not willing to go to battle for these gun owners in these blue states. Whatever the reason is, your guess is as good as mine. But to me, this sets a dangerous precedent going forward. And they should redefine these items that have been in this circle of litigation so long and caused so much confusion amongst gun owners and courts and judges and the federal government even. They've reclassified and then classified again and then taken this ruling away. I think it makes it pretty clear the ATF should absolutely go away, and these things should be on the books once and for all, that any device like this, any pistol brace, bump stocks, whatever accessories, are protected arms as well. Because once they get these devices, the lowest hanging fruit, that's when they come for more and more and more. So you may not agree with the FRT thing. You may say, I don't even have one, it doesn't affect me. But I promise you, if we allow this stuff to continue, it absolutely will somewhere down the line. There you go. There's my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.